Hi, hello. My name is Emily. I'm a certified mobile RV repair tech based in Las Vegas. I've been in business for 1 year. I figured now that I've gotten my little baby business off of the ground, we've moved from the launching, just figuring it out every day as you go phase to the trying to move from walking to running phase. I would take a deep breath, take a look back, and reach out a hand to anyone that is behind me in this process and trying to get their businesses off the ground. This is the step-by-step guide to how to start a mobile RV repair business that I wish had been out in the world a year ago. Because that's basically what I'm doing on this channel. I'm just trying to put things out in the world that I wish existed. I have a bunch of notes. This is going to be a long video. I hope it's jam-packed full of useful information. If you would like these notes in a much cuter format and with a whole bunch of links to the resources that I talk about in this video, you can find a link for that in the description or at rvrepairwoman.com/launch. Other housekeeping notes, I'm not saying this is the best way to do everything. I'm not saying that no one has ever done it better. I am just saying this is what I did in Las Vegas as a person that lives in a residential house. I am not a full-time RVer. I don't move around constantly. I stay in Las Vegas. I had never started or ran a business before. This was my first time doing everything, figuring it out as I go. I wish there had been just like a little more guidance in the world. So I'm putting that guidance out, hopefully, for the next person. Let's go. Okay, ignoring what a total mess my desk is, the very first thing that I did getting this business off the ground before I ever put a cent of money down to go to school, before I ever looked into starting an LLC, I just did the tiniest, babiest, littlest amount of market research just to see if this was a business that I thought could even potentially be a little viable in the space that I was in. So what that looked like for me is I literally just went to Google and typed in RV repair near me, mobile RV tech near me, Las Vegas mobile RV tech, and things like that, and just looked at the options that came up. I got a general idea of how much competition there was in the city, what the going rate was for the kind of work that I wanted to do, and then what was the general vibe of what was in the market already, and was there any hole in the market that I could fill or be slightly different with. Basically, I was looking for, was there any way that I could stand out and look different from the competition? And just doing the smallest amount of basic market research, I figured out that one, as a woman in this space, I would be one of, if not the only woman doing RV repair in the city. So I knew being a female in the space would set me apart. I knew being relatively young in the space would set me apart. I'm 29 now. I was 28, 27 when I started this, and I read a lot younger than I do. I get people thinking I'm like 19 all of the time. I got like aggressively carded the other day trying to get a beer at a bar, which hasn't happened to me in years. I was like, oh, fountain of youth over here. 30 who? Not here. Also, I was trying to get a beer, not like 17 shots. I don't know. I don't know why that guy was like so perplexed by my ID, but anyway, being young, being a woman, and then just looking at the websites that were already out in the world doing this in Las Vegas, most of them weren't really inviting. Like when I went to their website, it didn't scream somebody that I want in my home, which is totally fine. Like you get to decide what makes up your brand. For me, I decided that if I went for a really welcoming and approachable brand and company style, that would also really set me apart from what was already there. Oh, and being certified. There's almost no other certified mobile tech in the area. So I knew that would also make me stand out. So I did some research. I looked on the websites. I figured out that yes, this market wasn't just like already totally flooded with people. There was space for me in the market. And then I just did what I consider the BBB, or the bare bones business plan, which is just like the simplest one-page business plan you could possibly make. And there was no words. Normally when people talk about making a business plan, they're talking about this like really long document that outlines like all these like crazy visions they have for the company. And just in my opinion, that's not very useful. Especially if you've never ran a business before. I don't know how making like a 5 or 10-year plan is that useful. Any 10-year plan I had made last year would just be so totally irrelevant for where I am now as a company. I feel like now, having been in business in a year, I can now start thinking about like 5-year plans and how I want to grow and expand as a company or as a business. Without being rude, you don't know anything until you get into it. You don't know what you don't know. So coming up with some crazy big business plan that's just like full of dreams and hopes and wishes isn't very useful, at least in my opinion. What was useful for me were some hard numbers. And so with the help of my mom, shout out RV Repair Mom. So the bare bones business plan, instead of being full of lofty goals, looked a little bit more like this. It started with me coming up with basically what is the smallest amount of money I could make each month and cover my ass. What lets me pay my bills, put money towards retirement, because for me, that's a non-negotiable, that's a bill for me, and not be broke on the street. So I figured out what that lowest number was. Then I pumped in just my general guess at what I wanted to charge, and then calculated, factoring in a handful of expenses, how many calls I would need to do each month in order to hit that number. And then I played around with it a little bit. Like if I did more calls, or I changed my rate, or I was able to lower my expenses, what that all looked like. And did the number seem reasonable? If you, for instance, put in a number for your bare bones must make each month, and you do the math out and you need to be doing 100 calls a month in order to make that number, that's just not realistic, especially when you're first getting started. But for me, pumping in numbers, I live pretty well under my means, so my bare bones number was pretty low. So once I started plugging in some basic numbers of what I could charge, the number of calls I needed to make each month seemed very reasonable and seemed like something I could handle, and made me comfortable enough to move forward in considering starting a business. If you would like a link to the bare bones business plan that RV Repair Mama and I put together, that's also linked in the description along with the guide that goes along with the rest of this video. So once I had done just a little bit of market research just to figure out how realistic this business was, and determined that this was something I thought I could do, make money off of, survive, the next thing I did was come up with a company name. This isn't necessarily like the next most important thing you need to do. It was just the next thing that I did, because I made the decision that I was going to go to RV school, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about, in August, but I wasn't scheduled to go until January. So I had all of August, September, October, November, December. I had 5 months of just like sitting around, twiddling my thumbs, reading books, and just trying to get ready. So in all of that time, I came up with a business name. Things to keep in mind when you're naming your company. 1, take a look and see if you can get a domain name, the YouTube channel, the Instagram, and the Twitter, or X, whatever we're calling it now, for whatever your business is. The domain name's the biggest one, making sure that you can get it for a relative price. But also while you're at it, just grab all the social medias. Even if you're like, Emily, I am not a social media person. I'm not one of you young whippersnappers. I don't want to make a YouTube channel. That's totally fine. But in 10 years when your RV repair business has blown up and you're making $1 jillion a year fixing RVs, you don't want somebody else putting out content under your name. So just while you're doing research about what to name your business, that's just something to keep in mind. I honestly don't think the company name makes a big deal, but some things that I would consider if I were you is, one, just making it really clear that you either fix something or work on RVs, or both, in the name. There's a couple RV repair businesses out there where I've seen the name and I have no idea what the business does. The other thing to keep in mind is what makes your business unique. So when you did your market research earlier and you figured out what your unique value proposition was, what's going to make you stand out in the market, is there any way that you can put your uniqueness into the title of your company? For me, I knew one of the biggest obvious differentiators was going to be that I was a woman. And so I just pulled up synonyms of woman. I was looking at woman, lady, girl, bitch, I even considered at one point, because that's a term that like my friends and I throw around. Lass. We had them all. And we were just throwing words together, seeing if we could get the domain name for these different ideas, until my dad finally just said, hey, what about just keeping it simple? RV repair woman. And at first I wasn't like that attached to the idea. Again, when you're looking at words just like that feel a little bit more creative, like lady and lass and things like that. But then the more I sat with it, the more I was like, yeah, short, sweet, to the point, RV repair woman, you know what you're gonna get. Woman's in the title. I could get the domain name. Fun story. At first I was trying to be the RV repair woman, but that domain name was like $2,000, whereas rvrepairwoman.com was like $20. And so that is the reason that my company is called RV Repair Woman and not the RV Repair Woman. Just came down to what the domain name cost. You may have something else that is your distinguishing factor. Maybe there's only big corporate RV shops in your area and you're gonna be the one small business, like Little Guy RV Repair or something like that, or Local RV Repair, something that says you're a small business in the title. Maybe in your area, it's a bunch of whippersnappers doing this and you're going to be the one older person. Make a reference in your title that only your generation is going to get. Just something. It doesn't need to be crazy. It doesn't need to be over the top. But if you can get in your title the thing in your business that makes it different from all the rest, it can help with that know, like, trust factor that you're trying to get from your customers that much faster. You want your customers to look at your website, look at you, look at your business, and immediately feel like they know you, they like you, and they trust you. And if you can somehow hit on all of those things with just a name, you're gonna be a jump start ahead. But also if you just decide that you want something bare bones basic for your company name, I honestly don't think it makes that much of a difference. Okay, so I had done some research. I had a company name. Now it was time to learn how to actually fix RVs. I've talked about this in other videos, but just as a refresher, I went to the Nrvta, the National RV Training Academy. That is a program out in Athens, Texas, that teaches RV techs and RV inspectors how to work on RVs. That program for me was 5 weeks to become a certified tech, and then I stayed an additional 2 weeks to learn about solar and generators. If you want to know more of my thoughts about my time there, you can learn about that at my Was the Nrvta Worth It video. Spoiler alert, I think it was. There are other options out there to learn about fixing RVs. I know the Nrvta has an online training program that's $600 and it's completely self-paced online. You have a year to go through the whole program. You could not get any schooling at all and try to wing it. Maybe you've lived in RVs your entire life and think that you've got enough knowledge to do this on your own. You could also decide that you just want to specialize in one appliance and just be really good, really efficient, and really niche at one appliance. For instance, here in Las Vegas, you could potentially just do RV ACs. You would probably need to do ACs and furnaces in order to have business year round. But like the amount of AC calls you get here during the summer is so high that you could really specialize in that and just have a truck with AC parts on it and like an air conditioner on the truck ready to go for when somebody's dies. I'm saying all this to say you don't necessarily need to go learn about everything. I think it helps because so many of the different parts are connected. Like I'm looking at the air conditioner I have on my desk right now. There are scenarios where like the reason that the air conditioner isn't working is because a switch has been turned off on the furnace, which is so silly and so ridiculous, but is like a weird niche scenario that you don't necessarily know about if you don't know the big picture. But if the idea of learning every appliance in an RV is overwhelming, you can potentially start your business by just knowing one and knowing it really well. But you are going to need to get some education somewhere. Okay, so I had a company name and I got myself to the Nrvta to learn how to fix RVs. While I was at the Nrvta in the evenings and on the weekends, I did as much prep of the business side of things as I could, so that way when I got back to Las Vegas, I could start running as fast as possible and already have all of this extra backup work done behind me. So the first biggest part of that was setting up my LLC. For those of you that don't know, an LLC is a limited liability corporation. It's basically the form that you fill out to tell the government that you exist. You have a business, you are doing work, and people are paying you for it. Why the heck you want to fill out this form? One, so you can legally operate. Very exciting. I love not going to jail. Number two, it's to protect your butt. The LL in LLC stands for limited liability. What that means is by filling out this form and telling the government that you are a business instead of just a human, is that you can now separate your business expenses and your business life from your personal expenses and your personal life. So that way in the future, if somebody tries to sue you, they can sue you and they can come for all of your business, but they can't come for all of your personal. So for me, like they could come for my truck, my tools, there's more, but they could come for that stuff. They can't come for my house, my retirement fund, and my family. Like I am telling the government that there is a business entity that is separate from my personal entity. Here in Las Vegas, you go to a website called Silver Flume that walks you through the process step by step. It was honestly pretty easy. Can't speak to how difficult it is to find that paperwork in other states, but Silver Flume did a pretty decent job. Go Silver Flume. What was not immediately apparent from Silver Flume was, even though I had my LLC and my Nevada business license, I also had to get a separate business license for Clark County. That one renews every 6 months, as opposed to my Nevada business license that renews every year. And that was not readily apparent until I started getting some angry letters from Clark County saying that I was missing some paperwork for them. So just something to look into when you're starting your business. Honestly, what happened was Clark County sent me a couple of letters. It took a couple of them for me to realize that they were actually important and not spam. And then I just went online and I paid them I think it was like $30 that I owed them, and then it was okay. So just know that that was one of my biggest fears going into this, was I was going to mess up and forget some form, and then someone was going to come knocking on my door and drag me out of my house and onto the lawn for everyone to watch and laugh at me, and that didn't happen, okay? I got a couple letters in the mail. I paid a small late fee. Everything was fine. Okay. And then also at this time, I started the process of trying to get my propane license. So again, if you don't know, in order to crack a propane line, so to disconnect a propane appliance, you most likely need a certification or a license from the state that you are working in. But it really varies drastically from state to state. In some states, you don't need one at all. In some states, you do, but it's just a one test or one class you have to take, and in others it is this very long drawn out process. Here in Nevada, you took one test that was open book and then paid the license fee and you were done. So I couldn't do that until I got back from Texas, but I started the process of looking into what that entailed in Nevada long before I came back from the Nrvta. Because again, you're gonna most likely have to go through a governmental office to figure that out, and they are slow and not with the times. Like, I had to talk to people on the phone. I think I faxed something at one point. Like, the process to figure out what it was going to take to get the certification was ridiculous. So I would recommend starting that process and at least figuring out what that's going to entail for you while you're still at school, if you are going to a school that takes a long time. So after setting up my business license, getting my LLC paperwork all figured out, the next big step was to figure out a business bank account. One of the great parts about owning a business is you can now have business expenses. Basically what this means, when you go to do your taxes and tell the government how much money you made that year, you can subtract all of the things that you had to pay for in order to make that money. So basically, you know, parts that you buy, gas you put in the truck. If you buy a truck, that's a business expense. You obviously aren't going to be buying all of these things right now up front, but as soon as you can, you want to separate your business expenses from your personal expenses. This is going to make your life so much easier down the road when you need to file taxes, but also just to have any idea how your business is doing day to day. It's almost impossible to know if all of your money and the business's money are intertwined. So you want to get everything separated out as soon as possible. So that's why opening a business bank account was one of the earlier things that I did. So I picked to use Relay as my bank of choice to start with. This is because I am following a method put forward by the book Profit First for how I divvy up my money that makes it into my business. So real quick overview of like the Profit First system. His book is basically just talking about what percentage of the money that comes into your business should be allocated to different things. So what should go towards taxes, what should go towards operating expenses, what you should pay yourself, and what should be putting aside towards quote unquote profit. This was a really great book for someone that was starting out. Like, I had no reference for what I should be paying myself out of the money that the business made. It still feels illegal every time that I pull money out of the business to pay myself. It just feels like something that shouldn't be allowed, but it is like that is part of having a business, is paying yourself. But it felt good having at least a starting point with that, and like having a book to walk you through just like the basics of how much money should be going towards each of those things. And he recommended the bank Relay because they will allow you to open up multiple accounts without giving you a ton of hassle. So the way that I have my accounts set up in Relay is I have 5 of them, which I know makes people go insane, but it really is relatively simple. I have one that all of the money goes into. So anytime someone pays me or I deposit a check, it goes straight into the income account. And then once a week, it automatically gets divvied up percentage-wise into 4 other accounts. So one to pay myself, one to go towards taxes, one towards operating expenses, so I can pay for things like gas and parts as they come in, and then one goes towards profit. So basically saving towards long-term expenses. And that all happens automatically and systematically, that I don't have to think about it. And that was really easy to set up, hashtag not sponsored. It's just what I used and what works for me. One thing to note about Relay, one hiccup that I had along the way, they send you a debit card for the first account that you open, so that way you can have a card to pay for things with. That's great. That card, you can go into the app and set daily and monthly limits for that card, which is great, so you don't overdraft. When they send you the card in the mail, those daily and monthly limits are automatically set to $0, which was not readily apparent. Like, I had to do some Googling to figure out why my card wasn't working. And then I set them to the max because I was so frustrated and just needed to pay for things with my damn card. But that's just like one thing to know if you do decide to use Relay. When they do send you that card, you need to go into the settings in the app and up those daily limits past 0, or the card will be useless. Even once I set those limits up to as high as they would go, I still ran into problems from time to time trying to purchase large expenses with that card. Like anything over $500 was a little hit or miss on whether or not it would let it through. I would get an email or a notification saying that I had hit my daily or monthly limit when it would be like the first of the month at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was just trying to pay $500 for something. And they'd be like, "You've hit your limit." I'm like, "No, I haven't. There is no way." So I eventually went and got a business credit card. Mine is through Capital One. I'm not like in love with this business credit card. It was just like one that I found that had decent reviews and would approve me in my very new business. One regret I have, I would have gotten the business credit card sooner. I am just very apprehensive towards credit cards. As a millennial, we're told constantly that like we're bad with credit and we're all going to go into debt and have crazy credit card debt. So I've been like terrified of credit cards for most of my life. So I was hesitant to get one for the business, but it made making those large purchases so much easier. Like they automatically went through, and you can get a small percentage of cash back for some of those large purchases. So when I pay $1,200 for an air conditioner, I at least get a little bit of kickback for it, which is nice. It's nice. Okay, with banking out of the way, the next thing that I needed to look into was making my website. I chose to make my website through Squarespace. I tried for like a week to make my website using Google's free website builder because I was trying to start my business with my expenses as low as humanly possible. But I just was not able to make a website that I was happy with using that builder. I'm sure someone with some better graphic design instincts could. They just don't give you a lot of templates or help with color or design choice at all. So I eventually gave up and paid for a month of Squarespace just to see if I would like it, and I did. It just made building the website so much easier, and things just looked nice without me even trying. You could make a basic website using Google's website builder for free, and then to upgrade later after you're making some money. That'd be a great decision to do. Like, you're not stuck with whatever website builder you choose. You can pick one and then change it later down the road. So if you're in the beginning steps of starting a business and you're trying to keep expenses down, that is an option. I just knew from the market research that I had done at the beginning that one of the things that was going to make me stand out was having a decent website. For me and the values of my company and like how I was going to stand out, that was something that was important to me. A book that really helped me with coming up with the copy for my website was Building a Story Brand. They do a really good job of walking you through how to come up with not just words for your website, but also a brand wide language that you can use throughout all of your marketing materials. So that way your website, and if you decide to do other social media, your YouTube and your Instagram, like all sound the same. They all sound like they're coming from the same place. So much of starting a business just feels like staring at a blank page. It was really great with StoryBrand to just have something to walk you through how to go from blank page to being able to tell people about your business without sounding super salesy or super robotic and just like sounding like a human. Other things I did while I was building my business was to look at other websites that weren't necessarily in the RV space, but had a vibe that I was kind of going for. If you are a female in the marketing space at all, you've heard of Jenna Kutcher and Amy Porterfield. They are online marketing women. Jenna Kutcher has a line in the intro to her podcast where she says something along the lines of, think of this podcast as a happy hour with your gal pals mixed with business school. And I sort of wanted my business to feel like, you know, happy hour with a gal pal mixed with RV school. So I went to her website just to get an idea of layout, an idea of how she made her website feel welcoming, and transferred some of those to my website with an RV repair woman spin on them. My biggest tip when making your website is just to put call now buttons freaking everywhere. So like in the upper right hand corner, call now. On the homepage, like the first thing you see right in the center should be a call now button. After almost every section, there should be a call now button. Here's my about me underneath it, call me. I see so many websites where you can get excited about whatever they're selling or decide that they are the person for you, but then it isn't immediately obvious how to give them money or how to start the process of them giving you the thing that you want. So just make step one as easy as humanly possible and put contact buttons everywhere. One other tip I would have after doing this for a year, I currently have on my website a My Services section where I list out the things that I work on. I am considering putting on there a things I do not work on section. I just need to figure out a better way to word it. I spend a lot of time on the phone talking people through things that I don't work on. When customers call, they want to tell me about how their children are doing, what type of RV they have, and how old the RV is. And all of a sudden we're deep into this conversation before they finally tell me that they have a generator problem. And I don't work on Jennies. So now it's been 5 minutes of my life that I can't get back. I also don't work on chassis, car motors, brakes, transmissions, any of that. And so I'm working towards trying to make that more apparent on my website. So just something to keep in mind, especially if you are someone who is niching down and only works on something very specific, make it clear on your website what stuff you do not work on, because you will get calls for everything. Bonus tip, if you are going to the Nrvta, know that behind the Big Red Barn, they have a whole bunch of rundown RVs that you are welcome to go crawl around in and practice on and just like look at in your spare time. I highly recommend just one of the afternoons that you're free while you're there on a weekend, grab a buddy and go do a photo shoot day. Just get like a bunch of pictures of you looking at an air conditioner, looking at a fridge, crawling under an RV, getting on top of an RV, all of these things. This way you have photos and content that you can put on your website, and you have pictures of you on a bunch of different RVs. Otherwise, you will find later down the road when you do need a picture of something, you're going to do it on your RV because that's what you have easy access to. And then all of your pictures are from the one RV. So just to have like added credibility on your website, if it just looks like you've been in a bunch of different RVs, it just gives you like that extra little bit of credibility without having gone on a bunch of calls yet. So bonus tip. The next thing we're going to talk about before I head off to this call is merchant services, because in order to make money, you need a way to take customers' money. I use Square as my primary merchant services provider. Basically, Square is how I run credit cards. You can set up a Square account for free, and they will send you their basic card reader for free. And that'll allow you to swipe cards with the reader attached to your phone, which is super dope. Honestly, most people I have found have contactless cards now, and most phones now, you can take contactless payments through the phone. So that's just something to keep in mind. I would recommend while you're setting up your merchant services, get your Zelle set up, your Venmo, your Cash App, your Apple Pay, all of those. I found that a lot of people are willing to pay through one of those different providers, and then you don't have to pay the service fee. So just so you know, if you run any credit card, and I don't care what merchant service provider you're using, they're gonna take a small fee from it. For Square, I want to say it's like 2.5 to 3% plus like 10 cents per transaction, which really can add up when we're talking about like thousands of dollars. It is so sad to make like $2,000 and then have to pay a huge chunk of that to Square just because they ran the credit card. So I found a lot of these small one-off people are totally willing to pay you through Zelle, Cash App, or Venmo if you mention that it's then cheaper for you. People are awesome that way. One thing to know, if a customer does pay you through like Zelle or Venmo or Cash App, they're most likely still gonna want a receipt. You can still send a receipt through Square. What you'll do is you'll go into the invoices, you'll make an invoice for the work that you did, and you'll send that to the customer. And for like 7 seconds, it's going to look like the customer needs to pay the invoice. And then what you're going to do is just click on the 3 dots in the corner and click pay or mark as paid and just say cash. And then that'll give the customer a full itemized receipt and means that you don't have to pay Square the 3% on the work, which is great. We love that. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is inventory for parts. So there are a bunch of different schools of thought on getting parts. I personally do not keep a huge inventory in my truck. I live in a pretty major metropolitan area. I live in Las Vegas, and I can get things shipped here pretty quickly. So I have the policy where, especially for my first year in business, I did not just go out and buy parts that I thought people would need. I waited until I had a customer who needed that part, and then I would usually get 2 of them. So like, I had someone that needed a new board for their water heater. I bought 2 of that water heater board. So now I have an extra one on the truck, so the next person will be able to be serviced faster. That's just what I do and what's worked for me. It's kept me from buying like a whole bunch of extraneous parts that I'll never use. It can be really hard, especially when you're beginning, to figure out what's gonna break in your area. Like, what are people going to need in your area a lot? So like, I personally wouldn't recommend just going out and buying a bunch of parts because it's just like a lot of money. But I have heard other schools of thought. I had one teacher at the Nrvta talked about how he would take just the money from his service calls and he would pull out what he needed for gas from that, and he would use the extra to just build up his inventory on parts, which is one way to go about it. They also, when we were at the Nrvta, gave us these lists of like recommended parts to buy, and almost every teacher would give you a list of the stuff that they would keep on their truck. And I just found that if you bought all of that, it was like wicked expensive. It was a ton of money. And I keep getting calls for like really niche, really specific things that wouldn't have been covered on that list. So at least for me, just like going out and buying a ton of parts just wasn't the right decision. But if you have a lot of money to put down, it can save you a lot of time in the long run. I just know when I first got started out, my first call was for an air conditioner. So I went and bought like every capacitor that could possibly come in an air conditioner because I wanted to be ready for this call. And then it turns out it wasn't the capacitor. And in fact, I have yet to have a capacitor be the problem on any air conditioner that I've looked at. So I now just have a crap ton of capacitors, which is fine because like caps aren't that expensive, so it wasn't like this huge investment. But like if I was doing that with every type of part, I'd be in for a lot of money that I hadn't made back yet. I'm just a little woman out here. I'm trying to make as much money as possible. I don't have extra to spend. While I was at the Nrvta, I also started the process of becoming an authorized dealer for as many parts distributors as I could. And this was a little bit of a process, so I recommend getting started with it as soon as you become a certified tech. So like if you're at the Nrvta for the 7 weeks, I recommend after you finish the 5 weeks, in that extra 2 weeks in the afternoons, work on becoming an authorized dealer because it takes some time and it's kind of a pain in the butt. Step 1 to this is to get your Reseller Certificate, which I have up on my screen so I can look at it. This was not immediately intuitive to me, so I just want to explain it to everyone else. When you got your business license, way back in that step, at one point, at least when I did it in Silver Flume for Nevada, it's going to ask you whether or not you sell physical product. And at first I had clicked no, because I consider myself a service-based business. I'm not an art store, I fix RVs. But if you want to sell expensive parts to customers and make money off of the change in price between what you bought that part for and what you are selling it for, then you are selling product and you need to click yes when they ask you that question. At least in Silver Flume, when you hit yes on that question, it had you fill out an additional form to get a seller's permit number. It's just like an extra number on top of like all of the 17 other numbers that you get when you start a business. I then just Googled Nevada Reseller Certificate, and you will want to ignore all, like the first 7 things that come up are going to be sponsored websites. You don't want those. You're looking for something that has a .gov website. And for me, when I Google Nevada Reseller Certificate, I skip all of the sponsored posts. The next one is this. It just brings up the Reseller Certificate. Not even on a website. You just have that. And it's going to look something like this. This is what it looks like for Nevada. The Reseller Certificate is not another form that you are sending to the government. The Reseller Certificate is basically a contract between you and these parts dealers saying that you are legally allowed to resell parts and that you are going to collect the sales tax. When you become an authorized dealer, you are going to be sold parts without paying the sales tax. So in order to be legal, you need to charge the customer the sales tax when you sell it to the customer. Okay? To become an authorized dealer, you're going to have to go to each website and fill out whatever form that part dealer has. It's a slightly different process for each one. I'll have the links for them in the launch guide, but it was a pain in the butt. I'm not gonna lie, it took forever. There was like a lot of them, and you have to refill out this Reseller Certificate every time for each authorized dealer. So when you fill out the Reseller Certificate, here is where you're gonna put that number that you got from the state when you said that you were a product seller. They gave you a seller's permit number. That's where that's going to go. Here is just where you're going to describe the types of parts. I usually just said RV parts. And then from is where you're gonna put the parts dealer that you are trying to become an authorized dealer for. You are going to send this along with whatever form it is that the dealer wants you to fill out. When you go to fill out those dealer forms, they're not gonna make sense a lot of the time for mobile techs. They're really set up for shops. Some of them are gonna ask you the square footage of your shop, and you're like, I'm a mobile tech. And I honestly don't have a great answer for how to answer these. I got denied by several of them. I think I'm still not an authorized dealer for Dometic. They're also going to ask you like how much product do you think you're going to buy from us? And I'm like, I literally just started this business 2 days ago. I have no freaking idea. I think finally I found one that said they would not accept you unless you put at least 10 grand as that, like, how much product do you think you're going to move number. So I started putting 10 grand as my estimate, and I got approved by a couple more. So that's just like a number to throw out there. But yes, once you get accepted and you become an authorized dealer, you can get these parts from these parts dealers for significantly cheaper most of the time than where you can get them if you are just a layperson looking online. And then you can sell them for a markup to the customer. If you do that, you do need to make sure to collect sales tax. I recommend, if you are using Relay as your banking provider, just making another account, labeling it sales tax, and just pulling the sales tax and putting it there and having it sit there for when you pay your taxes. On the topic of getting parts and where to get parts, a lot of the people at the Nrvta really hated on Amazon. They were like, never buy your parts from there. And honestly, I still get a ton of my parts from Amazon because I can usually get them faster and for a lot less hassle than I can from my parts dealers. Like, the wait time sometimes from a parts dealer is like 2 weeks, and I can get it from Amazon in a day sometimes. Amazon Prime is really fast here in Las Vegas. So that may not be worth it to you if you live somewhere more rural and Amazon is not as fast. But for me, I can charge more for the part because I can get it in so quickly. But yeah, that's the reseller certificate and how to become an authorized dealer. Okay, setting up your phone. Some people just use whatever line that they had as a personal line before they started working as a mobile tech. As a woman, I didn't really feel comfortable with that, especially because I was going to be putting my number on the back of my car, on shirts I was going to be wearing, my website, all over the place. I didn't want that to be my personal number. I wanted that to be something that, like, if that number went totally off the rails, I could cancel it. I could more easily change my business number than my personal number, all that good stuff. But I still did not want to pay for another line on my phone plan. Because again, I was trying to start this business for as cheap as possible. So I just started a line with Google Voice, which you can do totally for free. You just fill out their form and then download an app on your phone. I can take calls and text messages from it. The handful of downsides with Google Voice: one, we tried doing call forwarding for a while. We wanted to see if my mom could answer the phones for me because she's just better on the phone than I am. And also it's easier if you can to have someone answer the phone while you're on calls, but it just didn't work very well. The only way we could figure out how to do it would involve forwarding every call that came to my phone, including the personal ones, over to my mother, which at first I was like, I don't really get that many personal calls. This shouldn't be a big deal. And then you don't realize how many calls you get until they're all getting forwarded to your mother. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Call forwarding, not fantastic or really easy to set up. And then the other one was you don't get any caller ID with that. So it looks like my own business is calling me, which means I don't know when the phone rings if it is the customer that I just left telling me that I forgot a part, a customer who I never want to speak to again because they were too difficult, or a new customer calling in to like ask me a question. I have no idea when I pick up the phone, and that is honestly a little anxiety inducing for someone who is not the most phone comfortable human. I think I speak for a lot of millennials. I don't love picking up the phone. Policies that I have started putting in place to work around this is I'm now getting enough calls through my phone that it's a little overwhelming. So I've put in my voicemail to please text me as instead of leaving a voicemail or on top of leaving a voicemail. And I have found that this has streamlined my customer interaction system tenfold. One, this narrows down my customer base pretty quickly. So on days when I'm getting really overwhelmed, I just concentrate on the ones that have texted me. They were people that were willing to take just one extra step in order to contact me. So I will get to them first before sitting down and listening to all of my voicemails. Two, the customers that are willing to text, in as a huge generalization, tend, at least to, in my experience, be easier to deal with than ones that won't text me. One, it's shown again that they are willing to just take like a little extra effort in order to contact me. So they just tend to be just like a little more forgiving in that way. And two, as we're going through the process of working together, if I have a quick question that I need answered, we've now already set up this texting relationship. So I can just quickly ask them my question and get it answered without having to do like the back and forth telephone thing that takes like for frickin' ever just to get one question answered. Thirdly, this also helps me get people that I don't work for out of the way much faster. I talked a little bit in my website section, but I get calls all the time for work that I don't do. I don't work on generators. I don't work on chassis. I don't work on any part of the RV that makes it like a car. And unfortunately, when people call, they tend to want to rattle off the age of the vehicle, the story of what's wrong with the vehicle, their life story, how the kids are doing, before they finally tell me what they want me to fix. So I'm sometimes deep into this conversation before we finally get to the point where I can say, I do not do this kind of work. And so again, if we can just get that all in text, it forces people to be a little bit more succinct, and it forces people to get to their actual question much faster. I can get through the type of work that I don't do anyway and get those people off of my roster much more quickly. Okay, so I had the schooling, I had done all of my paperwork, I was legally a business, I had made a website so people could find me, and I had set up all of the back end so that way people could pay me. The next step was to figure out what they were going to pay me. And this was one of the hardest things because I had never had to put a price on myself before. And it can be really hard mentally going from a job where you're maybe making $20 an hour to having to pitch to someone that they should be paying you over $100 an hour. So a couple things to keep in mind if you're just having problems with like the mental leap there. One, that hour that the customer is quote unquote paying for is going to be more than 1 hour of your time, because you are going to have to put in time for that customer to find you, and that is unpaid time. After you leave the customer, you're going to have to go home and do paperwork. You're going to have to itemize your expenses. You're going to have to track down a part for them. You're going to have to call them back and forth to coordinate things. There is likely going to be more than just that 1 hour interaction with the customer. So if you're having difficulties saying out loud that you deserve over $100 an hour, one thing to keep in mind is that you're going to be working more than 1 hour for that $100+. If you are trying to figure out exactly what you should charge, I again recommend doing some more market research. Go look and see what every tech in the area is charging. If they don't have it posted on their website, I don't have my prices posted on my website, give them a call and pretend to be a customer. Say that you have an air conditioner that you want diagnosed and how much would it cost for them to come out, or something like that. Make up a fake call. And they should give you their prices over the phone. If they don't, make a note of that. Bonus tip, make notes of how that interaction goes. Do you like how they talk on the phone? Do you like how they answered the phone? Were you able to get the information you needed quickly and efficiently? And see if you can take any of the things that you liked or didn't like about interacting with your competitors to improve your phone interactions with your customers. Just a thought. Do not come into the market and try to win out on being the cheapest. You're one, screwing over the market by driving down prices. So like everyone is losing when you do that. But two, if you are the cheapest in the area and you think that is how you are going to stand out, how do I phrase this well? You're going to attract a set of clientele that don't have a ton of money and most likely can't afford to pay you, which just isn't the kind of customer that you want. So I recommend looking around, seeing who's the cheapest, figuring out how you can be better or how you are better than the cheapest option and being a little bit more expensive than that if you're still struggling to justify what you should cost in your mind. Also keep in mind that you can always raise your rates later. That's what I did. So when I started, I charged a $75 service charge and then $125 an hour. So I could explain to customers that my first hour was $200 and every hour after that was $125. I have since increased my rates, so don't quote me on that, customers, because I've been in business for a year. I'm better, I'm more efficient, I have more parts on my truck, I can help people faster. And so I charge accordingly. That 75, 125 was what worked for me in this city with this level of competition. It was on the lower end of what people were charging here, but it was definitely not the cheapest. So keep in mind that your prices do not have to be a hard and fast rule. You can change them. That's why I personally don't put my prices up on my website, so that I have room for a little bit of flexibility and I can raise and lower them as suits me. In the summer this year, for instance, I am going to experiment with raising my prices just because it does get so hot here. Like we will crack 120 on the regular, and I just have to do a ton of prep in order to go work outside in those kind of temperatures. And I also burn through gas in my truck a lot faster because I'm having to crank the air conditioner. So yeah, I don't want to be outside when it's that hot. And so I raise my prices just a little bit to make it worth leaving the nice, comfortable air conditioning of my house. And then keep in mind that you can have different pricing models. So I have a service charge. Again, I used to charge $75 for that, and that would get you anywhere in the Las Vegas area. And then I would have a slightly higher service charge if you were in Boulder City, and a significantly higher one if you were in Pahrump, which are like the next two closest cities or towns to Las Vegas. That service charge covers the drive time that it takes to drive to the customer. You may decide instead that you just want to do an hourly rate and charge from the time that you leave your house. That's what my family does, and that's what Camping World does. Camping World, for instance, at least around here, has a flat hourly rate, but they charge from the moment they leave their shop, and they have a 2-hour minimum. So those are just two different models that you can go with. You can either just have an hourly, or you can have a service charge and an hourly. Some policies that you're also going to want to think about while you're thinking about your pricing. You want to think about, do you do estimates? I don't, except for larger companies, but you will get a lot of people calling or texting in asking you what you charge for an estimate. Usually what I tell people in those instances is I don't do estimates. Here is my pricing model, and let them know if they give me more information about their problem, I can give them a general idea on how long I think it would take to solve. Or I usually sometimes just need to reassure the customer that the minimum that they will pay is this amount, my service charge plus my hourly rate. And when we get to 1 hour, we can have a discussion about how much more or how little they want done. A lot of the people I have calling for estimates are more concerned about the tech showing up and then them all of a sudden having $1,000+ bill. So if you could just reassure them that you are upfront with your pricing and that you are going to charge what you say you're going to charge, and that they can have an input on how long you stay and therefore how long they're going to pay for, then for me, that calms a lot of the people just calling for estimates down. A quick note about accounting. When I first got started, I used QuickBooks because that was like the biggest name in the accounting and bookkeeping world, and I hated it. I hate QuickBooks. It is way more confusing than it needs to be for lay people. I think they are trying to do too much in one software and have left a lot of beginners and solopreneurs behind. If you use QuickBooks and you love QuickBooks, go for it. I personally have switched over to Hurdler, I think is how it's pronounced. And it is much simpler. The dashboard is just like 6 things, and it's just the 6 things that you would want to see when you're just trying to get a snapshot of your business. It connects to Square really well. So all of my income from Square is automatically funneled in through Hurdler, and it can do mileage tracking. I still haven't found a fantastic way to track mileage. Just know as a mobile tech, mileage is going to be a huge expense for you. Like you can get a tax write-off for like each mile that you drive, and as a mobile tech that's going to be a lot. So you need to find a system to track your mileage. If you have a business vehicle that is just for business, then you can just track the mileage on that truck. I do have a business vehicle. Unfortunately, it is a little hit or miss on when it wants to drive. It doesn't like driving in the rain. So I'm still having to swap back and forth between my personal vehicle and my business vehicle. And so I have to track mileage for that. Hurdler and QuickBooks both have built-in functions on their apps to track mileage, but it's one of those things where you either have to track every time you get in a car and then go back into their app and tell them which were personal drives and which were business drives, or you have to manually go into the app and turn it on and off every time you get in the car. And I just find that that's not really realistic with how much I drive and how much I get in and out of cars. I'm still working on a great system for mileage. If you have a great way that you track your mileage, please let me know down in the description, because right now it's still sort of hit or miss for me. I will say, back to Hurdler, it is significantly cheaper than QuickBooks. QuickBooks was like $30 a month, and Hurdler, I want to say even their most expensive plan is like $16 a month, and that lets you run your taxes through it at the end of the year. So even at its most expensive, it's still just over half the price of QuickBooks. I haven't ran my taxes yet for this year. I've just been so busy, but I am doing that soon. So maybe I'll pop on a little update here once I do run my taxes through it and let you know how easy or difficult that was. And then finally, the last thing I did to get my first customer, and therefore, in my opinion, fully launch this business off the ground, was to do a little bit of marketing. And this is the thing that scares a lot of people. The very first thing that I did marketing-wise was just put my pin on the tech locator that the Nrvta gives you. You can find it at the rvtaa.org website. You just put in the information about your business, tell them your website, and they will drop a pin. I think on that website you can have 2 pins on at a time. So a lot of techs that move will have their pin set for where they are, and then a pin set for the next place they're gonna go, so they can have calls coming in before they leave their current location. I just have the 1 pin set here. I know for a lot of businesses, it's a little hit or miss. Some people get a lot of calls through this pin. Some people get no calls through it. My first ever call for my business was found through this tech locator pin. I had done no other marketing other than having a website and putting that pin on, and I got my first call through it. So definitely worth taking the less than 5 minutes it takes to set the pin up, but this cannot be your only marketing strategy. The next thing that I did marketing wise when I got home from the Nrvta was put a sticker on the back of my car. This was in small part because when I started out, I was running my whole business off of a Kia Soul. And that wasn't necessarily a vehicle that screamed RV repair. And being a woman in the space and not necessarily being what somebody first envisions when they think of an RV tech, I just wanted something on the car that said, this woman is here to fix your RV. I also had 2 shirts made up with my logo on them and my number on the back, with the idea that I would wear these shirts around RV populated areas and people would want to walk up to me and ask me about fixing their RV. In reality, I am a really introverted person with a little bit of social anxiety. And so the idea of people just like walking up to me and starting to ask me questions without me being prepared was a little nerve-wracking. And I found that I didn't actually go out and wear those shirts that often. I also really liked the way that they looked and came out, and I didn't want them to get ruined. I was so precious with them in the beginning because every part of my business just felt so special because this was something I'd worked for so long. So yeah, just know maybe shirts, not one of the first things that you need. But if you are a more extroverted person, they can be a great tool, especially if you then go like walk around an RV park or walk around an RV parts store. Like, you will get people coming up and asking you questions. The next big thing I did marketing wise was I had a stack of business cards printed out. I designed those cards in Canva, which is a free design software, which is why I recommend choosing a font that you can get in both Squarespace and Canva. And then I got them printed off at like Staples. And I then went around to every RV park in town, and I would walk into their front office and ask if I could leave cards there. And if they said yes, I would then ask if I could just do one slow loop of the park just to familiarize myself with it. In theory, those 2 sentences are really easy to say. Just bring your business cards to all of the parks. In reality, the like 2 or 3 days it took me to do this was soul crushing. I don't want to scare anyone off of this, but I hated that experience. Some of the front desk people at these parks were incredibly nice. I had one who was like, "Are you actually a female tech in the space?" And for a brief second, I was like, are you like saying I don't look like a woman? Like, for a brief second, I was like, where's this conversation going? But then he kept going and he was like, I have a lot of single women in this park that would be way more comfortable calling a female tech into their homes than a lot of the men that are in town right now. And I was like, oh yeah, thank you. And he was like, yep, leave the cards, give me a couple extra. I'll hand some out to some people I know need help. Like, that guy was wonderful. He was an outlier. A lot of the other ones were really mean. You may run into parks where they tell you that in order for you to work in their park, you need to advertise in their welcoming brochure. So basically, they want you to pay them in order to work in their park. And some of them are very mean and aggressive with how they present it. I remember one park, I was talking to the woman at the front desk. She was super nice. And then another woman came in to the building out of nowhere and was like, have I got bad news for you? And like slammed a bunch of papers on a desk. And I was like, whoa, like coming in hot. And she was like, you're not allowed to work here. I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, I know what you're going to say because I've heard it from several other parks, but like, we could bring it down to from like an 11 to a 4. It's okay. And she was like, yeah, we're just like Oasis that way. Which, if you don't know, Oasis is one of the largest RV parks in town. It is ginormous and it's one of the most expensive. It's considered a high-end park here. And we'll just say the woman who told me this was not in charge of a park that looked like Oasis. That is just the nicest way to say it. You're like, ma'am, I don't think you're Oasis, but that's okay. I also did this same cold drop-in canvassing with my business cards for the RV dealerships in town. all of the shops in town that did chassis work on RVs and I knew wouldn't want to have to touch the appliances, like the stuff that I worked on. Even shops in town that did do the kind of work that I did, but maybe didn't have mobile work or mobile text to send out, and RV rental places in town, because those businesses churn through RVs. They get banged up on and the appliances take a hit. So just all places that you could give your business cards to. Some tips for if you are trying to do this canvassing of RV parks and it is going not the way you had hoped. One, all of those parks that told me I couldn't work there, I've done business there. Just when the front desk person tells you that, thank you so much for their time. You can ask about the pricing to be in the brochures if you'd like. A lot of them are only printed once a year, so you have to get in at the end of the year so that way you can be in their brochure for next year. And some of them are kind of expensive. If you're in a smaller park, it might be cheaper. Honestly, I have done work at every single park that told me that I wasn't allowed to work there, and it's never been a problem. So in my mind, it's a little like extortion, and I'm not a fan of it, and I didn't go for it. But you decide what works for you. If part of the reason why this whole like canvassing the parks thing isn't working for you is because it is just jumping your anxiety, like I got through the interaction of the slamming the papers down on the desk lady just fine, but I like went back into my car and I was a little shook from it, just because it was like one of my last ones of the day. It had been a long day. You're like, you had dreams that running this business was just going to be like smoother than this. And now you're having like all of these mean people talk to you. Like it can be a little depressing. It can bring the energy down. I recommend just grabbing a friend of yours that is extroverted, telling them you'll buy them dinner if they will pretend to be your assistant for a day, and have them come with you to your next round of going to parks. And then switch back and forth. You'll go in together, so now you're a duo. You can back each other up, and maybe at one park, you give the spiel, and at the next park, they do the spiel. This can help for people for whom social interactions can be a little draining, and you can drain your social battery really fast. Having someone else take half of that load can make the process less exhausting. Also, if you have a very extroverted friend, they just may be able to navigate some of those conversations more comfortably and smoothly than you can. And then you get to spend a day with your friend, and then you go buy them dinner afterwards. That is one time where the t-shirts might be helpful, because you clearly are a duo and you look like you come from the same company. But if you want the biggest bang for your time investment, marketing wise, for me, it was running Google ads, but I did it wrong in the beginning. So don't make the same mistake I did. When I first started my business, I put up a Google business profile for the business. And when I went to do that, it asked me where the location of my business was. Not a weird question for most businesses, but as a mobile tech, that is kind of a weird question. Legally, my business address is my home address. And that's not something I want to be giving out to just everyone. So I skipped that step when I first made my Google business profile, and I got no traffic from Google at all. And then randomly one day, I don't remember if I was going through a Reddit forum or what, someone mentioned that it really does need a location. So I went back into my Google business profile and just dropped a random pin in Las Vegas. And I immediately started getting calls the next day. If you want to bump this up even more, you can run the lowest pricing tier of ads that Google will let you do, and you will start getting calls in pretty much the next day. I know that can be scary at first to spend even more money when you're not having money come in yet, but one thing to keep in mind is I have never had my Google Ads profile spend the max amount of my budget in a month. So if you'll set it for like $10 a day, then in a 30-day month, the max of it would be $300 a month. I've never had it spend the full $300. So that's just one heart rate lowering thing to keep in mind. And two, again, if you're charging, $200 plus a call, 200 is on the low end. All it takes is 2 calls coming in to have paid and made a profit on those Google ads. So in the end, that Google business profile has been the biggest needle mover for my business, between that and my website. You can also do some social media work. So especially in my first year, I was all over social media. I was on Instagram. I was on TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest, a blog. I was everywhere. If you are considering getting into social media and you want to do some social media advertising, I would recommend picking one platform and just really dominating it. Again, in the beginning, I was trying to be everywhere, especially because I had more time on my hands when I was first starting my business because the calls weren't coming in yet. And I burnt myself out on it. And I was sort of mediocre everywhere as opposed to really good somewhere. So this year I've really pared down. I am really only focusing on YouTube. If you can't tell from this hour plus long video, I can talk. I can make some long form content. And I just found that I just wasn't as interested in making short reels to go on Instagram. And now I really just only post on Instagram when I feel compelled. Right now, I'm at a place that my YouTube channel is considered a long-term investment for me. Like, if you want to peek behind the curtain, I'm trying to get to a place where I can have on my website some guides for sale for people to help them fix their RVs by themselves for significantly cheaper than a tech could come out to help them. In the beginning, that's going to take the form of some PDF guides to help you diagnose very specific problems for your air conditioner. Right now, up on the website, I think I have how to diagnose step by step if your Coleman air conditioner is turning on but not blowing cold air. And it literally just walks you through step by step from the thermostat to the control box to the capacitor to the compressor, like testing every part of that system to figure out what your problem is and like where to put the probes and what you should expect reading wise in each area and then what each reading means. But yeah, that's sort of the long-term vision. Right now I'm trying to pump out several of those guides to get on my website before the summer hits. Long-term, I think I might make a how to fix any air conditioner course. That'll probably be a little bit more expensive, but still cheaper than honestly most techs are going to charge. I just realized my ceiling fan has been on this whole time and we're just gonna go with it. It's okay. I'm gonna turn it off now and we're just gonna pretend like it wasn't on this whole time and just spinning in the background. Let's see, can I get it to stop? Ah, okay. Oh, I should probably turn the light off too. Sorry for that travesty of cinematic filmmaking. But yeah, that's a long-term goal that I have. And right now I do get some calls from people finding me through YouTube, but that isn't long-term where I'm hoping to push people towards. Long-term, I would like to use my YouTube channel to market some of these like digital assets that I would like to be able to sell. That was a little bit of a tangent, but there are many people that market online through social media and do get calls through that. So just know that it is a big time investment, whereas opposed to the Google ads took almost no time and you can make the money back very quickly. But if you are willing to do the time investment of social media and really build a community, you could build something really big from that and have the potential to have different income streams, which is what I'm trying to do, again, in the long run. Just a little peek behind the curtain. I am a woman with a chronic illness, so like I am very aware of the fact that there are going to be times in my life where I either cannot physically work or I'm going to get to an age where I don't want to be doing physical labor. And that's why I'm trying to put the groundwork down now, so that way I can have other things to sell and other ways to make money that don't involve this fragile, aching body having to go out and crawl under an RV. I'm just being realistic that that's not something I can do for my entire life. Whereas I want to be able to still help people for as long as possible. This was a longie, but hopefully a goodie. If you are starting your own mobile RV repair business, please, one, remember, pick up the guide. I'm currently working on making these notes cuter, and that will be available in the description or at rvrepairwoman.com/launch. And if you are starting your own mobile RV repair business, especially if you are another woman in the space, please let me know in the comments. There are not enough of us out there, and I would love to connect. This has been RV Repair Woman. You got this.